They say the knife in your back always comes from the hand you trust the most. Imagine opening your home, your heart, and your life to someone you've loved since childhood, only to realize too late that she's been slowly killing you. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because she wants everything you have. Your home, your wealth, your husband, even your child. And the worst part? By the time you see the truth, she's already picked her next victim. Jealousy isn't always loud. Sometimes, it hides behind a smile, a kind word, a hug. But underneath? It's a ticking time bomb, just waiting for the right moment to strike. This is the terrifying story of two childhood best friends, one who had it all, and one who wanted it so badly, she was willing to kill for it. But just when she thought she had won, she walked straight into a trap of her own making. Welcome to Everyday True Crime, where we uncover the darkest and most twisted real-life cases. If you're fascinated by crime stories that expose just how dangerous the people closest to us can be, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, let's get into this disturbing case. Amara Cole and Celine Wright had been best friends since the first grade. They were the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences. They spent their summers climbing trees, building forts, and whispering secrets under the stars. Amara's family was stable, loving parents, a comfortable home, and endless support. Celine's life was different. She grew up in a small apartment with a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. She often spent nights at Amara's house, soaking in the warmth of a family that wasn't hers. They had made pinky promises to be in each other's weddings. Amara was the steady one, kind, ambitious, and always the one with a plan. Celine was wild, unpredictable, and never quite knew what she wanted. But despite their differences, their bond felt unbreakable. Growing up, Amara and Celine swore they would never let life pull them apart. But as they got older, their paths began to diverge in ways neither of them had expected. Amara excelled in academics and leadership. She was student council president, the one teachers trusted, the one classmates admired. Celine was smart too, but she craved attention in different ways. She wanted to be noticed. Amara excelled in school, got into a top university, and landed an elite post-grad internship. That internship changed her life forever. It was there that she met Daniel Cole, a charismatic tech entrepreneur from a billionaire family. They fell hard and fast, marrying in an extravagant ceremony and settling into a life that most people could only dream of. Amara had it all, a loving husband, a beautiful son, and a luxurious estate that overlooked the California coastline. Celine, on the other hand, struggled. After school, she bounced from job to job, never quite finding her footing. Relationships never worked out, and money was always tight. While Amara was building an empire alongside Daniel, Celine was still trying to figure out her next move. And every time she scrolled through Amara's social media, saw pictures of her friend draped in designer clothes, vacationing in places Celine had only seen in magazines, that tiny seed of envy in her heart started to grow. At first, she told herself she was happy for Amara. That's what best friends do, right? They support each other, celebrate each other's success. But deep down, something dark was festering. The more she saw Amara's perfect life, the more bitter she became. That should have been me. I should have been the one living in luxury. I deserve this life more than she does. Then came the perfect opportunity. Amara, ever the loyal friend, offered Celine a place to stay when she fell on hard times. She told her, "Your family, Celine. You don't ever have to struggle alone." That was all Celine needed to hear. She moved into the right estate, claiming she just needed a few months to get back on her feet. But in reality, she had no intention of leaving. She didn't just want to be part of Amara's life. She wanted to be Amara. And as she settled into the mansion, walking through its marble hallways, eating at its lavish dining table, and watching Daniel's effortless charm, her jealousy turned into something far more dangerous. Celine had always been good at reading people, and she knew exactly how to insert herself into the right household without raising suspicion. She played the perfect house guest, helpful, considerate, and endlessly grateful for Amara's generosity. She doted on Ethan, Amara's 5-year-old son, offering to babysit whenever needed. She cooked, cleaned, and listened whenever Amara needed to vent about life's little stresses. And Daniel? She was careful with him. Too careful. She never overstepped, never made her intentions obvious. Instead, she played the role of the loyal friend, the supportive presence always by his side. When Amara had headaches, Celine was the one bringing her tea. When Amara felt weak, Celine was the one fluffing her pillows and encouraging her to rest. Because the longer Amara was in bed, the more control Celine had over the house. Celine had done her research. She needed something subtle, something slow-acting. A poison that wouldn't immediately raise alarms. That's when she discovered thallium sulfate, an odorless, tasteless toxin that had been banned in most countries but could still be acquired through black market suppliers online. Thallium was a perfect choice. It mimicked natural illnesses, fatigue, nausea, muscle weakness, and eventually, organ failure. Most doctors wouldn't suspect poisoning unless they were specifically looking for it. And the best part? It didn't kill instantly. It would break Amara down little by little, making it look like she was wasting away from some unknown illness. Celine spent weeks scouring online forums, using encrypted browsers to avoid detection. She finally found a supplier, an overseas seller specializing in undetectable solutions for discrete eliminations. With a fake account and an untraceable crypto payment, she had what she needed. A tiny vial of death, shipped in a discreet package labeled as herbal supplements. Celine started small. A pinch of thallium in Amara's morning tea. A little more in her favorite fruit smoothies. Just enough to make her feel off but not enough to raise suspicion. At first, Amara brushed it off. "I think I'm just exhausted," she told Celine one evening, rubbing her temples. "Ethan's been keeping me up, and work has been non-stop." Celine nodded sympathetically, hiding her smirk. "You need to take care of yourself. Let me make you some tea." Over the next few weeks, Amara's health declined. She lost weight, her hair started thinning, and her once radiant skin looked pale and dull. She was constantly fatigued, her limbs aching as if she had the flu. Daniel grew concerned, insisting they see a doctor. "Maybe it's stress," the doctor suggested after running a round of standard tests. "We'll keep monitoring, but for now, just rest, hydrate, and try to reduce stress." Celine had planned for this. Thallium poisoning didn't show up in basic blood work. And with no immediate cause for alarm, she was free to continue. As Amara weakened, Celine strengthened her hold. She positioned herself as Daniel's rock, the one person keeping the household together. "I don't mind watching Ethan more," she assured Daniel. "You have enough to worry about with Amara's health. I'm happy to help." And Daniel, overwhelmed with concern for his wife, appreciated Celine's presence. He started trusting her more. Leaning on her more. Exactly as she wanted. By this time, Amara was barely functioning. She spent most of her time in bed, too weak to even play with Ethan. The doctors remained baffled, cycling through possible diagnoses but finding no definitive answers. Celine knew it was time. She prepared a special dinner, her version of Amara's favorite pasta dish. She played the part of the doting best friend, laughing with Daniel, telling stories, acting as if nothing was wrong. But in Amara's plate, she stirred in the fatal dose. That night, Amara went to bed and never woke up. When Daniel found her the next morning, his anguished cries filled the mansion. The official cause of death. Undetermined. The doctors ruled it as a possible cardiac event triggered by a mysterious illness. Celine had one. Or so she thought. Celine didn't have to move in, she was already there. Amara had taken her in months ago, believing she was helping her struggling best friend get back on her feet. But now, with Amara gone, Celine wasn't just a guest anymore. She was the woman of the house. She played the grieving friend flawlessly, holding Daniel's hand at the funeral, wiping away silent tears, making sure Ethan was taken care of. She cooked meals, kept the house running, and reassured Daniel when he broke down late at night. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he told her one evening, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and grief. She just gave him a soft, knowing smile. It didn't take long for Daniel to start leaning on her more. At first, it was innocent, late-night talks in the kitchen, shared grief over their loss. But then came the lingering touches, the long looks, the accidental brushes of skin that lasted just a little too long. And then, finally, the first kiss. Soon, she wasn't just Amara's best friend. She was Daniel's lover. Ethan, however, was different. He barely spoke to Celine anymore. He avoided her touch, refused to sit next to her, and watched her with wide, wary eyes. She noticed the way he flinched when she walked into a room, the way he clung to Daniel more than ever. He was 5. Old enough to sense when something wasn't right, young enough not to understand what. What she didn't know was that Ethan had seen something. That night, the night his mother died, he had woken up thirsty. He had quietly padded out of his room and made his way toward the kitchen. And there, in the dim glow of the stove light, he had seen Celine hunched over his mother's plate, stirring something in. He didn't understand what he was seeing, but he remembered it. Now, weeks later, those memories were starting to take shape in his little mind. He wasn't sure why, but he knew Celine had done something bad. He started asking Daniel strange questions. "Daddy, what happens when you eat something bad? Can food make people go to sleep forever? Mommy said only bad people hurt other people, right?" Celine heard the questions. And for the first time since Amara's death, she felt something close to fear. Celine had played the perfect role. The grieving best friend, the supportive caretaker, the woman who had selflessly stepped in to care for Amara's son when tragedy struck. She had fooled everyone, except Ethan. At first, she didn't pay much attention to him. He was just a child. What could he possibly know? But over time, she started noticing things. The way he watched her. The way he stiffened when she touched his shoulder. The way his normally bright eyes darkened with something deeper, something that looked like recognition. Then, one evening, as she tucked him into bed, he whispered something that sent a cold shiver down her spine. "You hurt my mommy." Celine's heart stopped. She forced a soft smile. "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" Ethan didn't blink. "I saw you. You gave her the bad food." Panic set in. He knew. Maybe he didn't understand exactly what he had seen, but he knew. And that made him dangerous. She had come too far to lose everything now. Celine decided Ethan had to go. It had to look like a tragic accident, just like his mother's death. That evening, she prepared his favorite meal, mac and cheese with crispy chicken tenders. She was meticulous, stirring the poison into the cheese sauce, making sure the dose was lethal enough to take effect quickly but subtly enough that it wouldn't arouse suspicion. As she plated the food, she forced herself to stay calm. Ethan wouldn't suspect a thing. He was just a child. What Celine didn't know. Someone else had been watching her. Ruth had worked for the right family for years. She had loved Amara like a daughter. And ever since Amara's death, she had never trusted Celine. Something had always felt off. She had seen the way Amara wasted away. She had noticed how Celine's presence in the house had grown stronger while Amara grew weaker. She had watched how quickly Celine took over, slipping into Amara's life like she had always belonged there. And tonight? She saw it with her own eyes. The way Celine had hovered over Ethan's plate a little too long. The way she had stirred the sauce with slow, deliberate movements. The way her hands trembled, just slightly, when she set the plate on the table. Ruth didn't hesitate. The second Celine turned her back, she swapped Ethan's plate with an identical one she had set aside for herself. Ethan, oblivious, happily dug into his food. Celine, unaware, took a bite of her own creation. It didn't take long. At first, she felt a strange warmth in her stomach. Then, a sudden wave of nausea. Her vision blurred, and her throat tightened as if it were being squeezed by invisible hands. She stumbled, knocking over her glass of wine. Her breath came in short, desperate gasps. Something was wrong. Her body convulsed, pain ripping through her like fire. She clawed at her throat, her eyes darting wildly around the room, until they locked onto Ethan. The little boy sat there, staring at her. Unblinking. Unmoved. And in that moment, she knew. She had poisoned herself. The moment the housekeeper saw Celine hit the ground, she wasted no time calling the police. By the time the paramedics arrived, Celine had already collapsed into violent seizures. They barely stabilized her before rushing her to the hospital, her face pale, her breath shallow. But she wasn't the only one who needed attention. Daniel demanded answers, and the housekeeper had them. With shaking hands, she recounted everything she had noticed over the past few weeks, how she had seen Celine lurking around the kitchen, how she had felt something was off about Amara's illness, how she had swapped the plates at the last minute because her instincts had screamed that something wasn't right. The officers listened carefully, their expressions darkening. Up until that moment, Amara's death had been considered a tragic medical mystery. No one had questioned it. No one had looked deeper. But now, with this revelation, they had no choice. One officer turned to Daniel. "Do you have security cameras in the kitchen?" Daniel blinked, his grief momentarily giving way to confusion. "Yes, but we never checked. We thought she was just sick." His voice cracked on the last word, as if he was only now realizing how blind he had been. The police retrieved the footage and played it back right there in the kitchen, the house eerily silent except for the low hum of the security system. And then, there it was, clear as day. Celine, alone in the kitchen, preparing the meal. Celine, pulling a tiny vial from her pocket. Celine, stirring something into Amara's food with practiced precision. Daniel staggered back, his entire body trembling. His mind replayed every moment, every conversation, every time he had trusted Celine while his wife had been dying right in front of him. He had let her in. He had believed in her kindness. And she had been murdering Amara right under his nose. The realization hit him like a sledgehammer. He had failed his wife. He had failed his family. The poison plate was taken into evidence and tested. The results came back quickly. The substance was thallium sulfate, the same substance they saw her pour into Amara's food. There was no doubt. No chance for an excuse or a lie. When Celine woke up in a hospital bed, she found herself surrounded by police officers. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists before she could even process what was happening. The arrest was swift, the charges brutal: first-degree murder for Amara's death and attempted murder for trying to poison Ethan. Daniel stood in the doorway of the hospital room, looking at her with the kind of disgust and rage that only a man who had lost everything could feel. "You were supposed to be her friend," he said, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "She loved you. We loved you." Celine had nothing to say. The trial was one of the fastest in recent history. The prosecution laid out an airtight case: security footage, the poison, the text records of Celine's shady online purchases, the housekeeper's testimony. The jury took less than 3 hours to deliberate. Guilty. On all counts. When the judge handed down her sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole, Daniel felt no satisfaction. No relief. Amara was still gone. Nothing could change that. But at least Celine would never be able to hurt anyone again. Celine thought she could steal Amara's life. She thought she had won. But in the end, all she gained was a prison cell. This case is a haunting reminder that jealousy, when left unchecked, can destroy lives, including the person consumed by it. What do you think? Was Celine always capable of this, or did jealousy push her over the edge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more shocking true crime cases, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This is Everyday True Crime, and I'll see you in the next case.